Supposed to be the crosswind stage of the Tour de France, the wind wasn't blowing, but we did have some good sprint action in a mass sprint finishing in Saint-Amand. Montrond. This was stage 10, the first day after the rest day. Probably exactly what a lot of the riders were looking for with some tired legs. Just a nice little warm-up, a wake-up after that rest day. But there's usually wind here, cross tailwind. It split in 2013 when Cavendish won the stage. We were thinking, who's going to jump in the breakaway? Answer, nobody, like in the previous stages. Everyone's decided to have a catch-up. How did your rest day go? Abrahamsen, there's no KOM points on the course for him, no categorized climbs, so nothing really for him. Tergis happy with the attention. Total won a stage, so why would they go on a TV exposure breakaway? So it was catch-up time. Eventually, Hoberhausens and Lotto Destiny, I think it started as a joke, decided as the Belgians to jump ahead, but actually it was a good idea if you're in Intermarché, because if you take away 3 or 4 positions at the intermediate sprint, then if Biniam loses the sprint to Philipsen, he'd only lose 1 point as opposed to 2 points. But actually, only 2 riders went up the road, despite FDJ with Genietz and Maxim Van Hills trying to join them. And I think Intermarché actually then realised that it was actually pretty good for Binny's green jersey that some points were taken away. But only 2 riders went across first. The others were caught by Sylvain Dillier and Alpecin. And Van der Poel was back doing a lead out for Jasper Philipsen. Demar on the left-hand side for Arkea Samsic. And a little bit of a messy sprint once again. We've got Philipsen jumping to the right towards the barriers. Gaviria on the wheel of Binny. Binny decides to try and squeeze up the barriers, but the barriers actually kick out. Let's have a look at it. So Philipsen thinks he's going to win this easily. He's got Demar absolutely beat. He looks across to him. Problem is he's sprinting or still mid-sprint, looks across, and then, like when you're driving or riding, if you look to your left shoulder, you then veer a little bit to your right, and that's what happens, and he nearly chops Biniam's front wheel, and Binny has to quickly course correct to avoid getting chopped. And then also the barriers came out, the feet of them a little bit more, the sponsor hoarding started. But actually, Binny nearly got chopped by Philipsen moving right swiftly when he looked over his shoulder. So I guess look straight ahead of you when you're sprinting. But the crosswinds never eventuated. There was no action taken, and it was a sleepy stage. Even in week 2, the GC teams or Israel, who were there for Pascal Ackermann, or Astana for Mark Cavendish, they were a bit more relaxed, to be honest. It only really started fighting in the descent with about 5Ks to go, and we've seen teams fighting with 25, 30Ks to go for positions. So it seems like everyone's kind of accepted where they are in the hierarchy, or maybe people have just relaxed after the first rest day. And 4Ks to go was the magic safety margin. It was a bit sketchy with a big descent and a full peloton straight into that on huge, big roads. But we get through there, no incidents, no crashes, and it's time for the sprinters teams to take over. EF Education Easy Post first with Paulus going from Moran, Vandenberg, Bissiger in front of him. We then see this sweeping left-hander, maybe with 3Ks to go, they're at the front a little bit too early. And when you look through a peloton like this and you see space, that means something's happened. If there's space, someone's crashed, someone's let the wheel go. It's not normal for the peloton to look that thin. And when we got the helicopter shot, could see there'd been a split, and Dylan Groenewegen was caught behind. And that's not where he would want to be with 2.3Ks to go. Abrahamsen starts smashing it, but there's no Christoph in his wheel. You've got on the right-hand side Ricard with the Alpecin train. Deeper is Laporte and Van Aert. They're very deep, and Laporte makes the move up at this point, actually. Starts to progressively move up the inside, although we're still on a huge road with 2Ks to go. There is an all-important left-hander, still on wide roads, then a right, and then another left with about 900 meters to go. Cavendish is detached from his train with no one to bring him up from that position, and his guy is right on the front already with Mercu. That's his sprint at this point pretty much over. Dali also too deep. He can't move up and loses a few wheels. So Mercu sees Cav and just pulls off and says, Alpecin, you go on the front. And we have Jonas Ricard, then Van der Poel, I think Robbie Hayes was in there, or Søren Kragh Andersen, and Laporte, even though he's the last man, he moves up the inside before this corner, and this corner is so important. Gaviria's got the wheel of Van Aert, Demar's on Philipsen's wheel, Ackermann's he's just surfing wheels, his last man's about to pull off here before this corner. Groenewegen, actually, he's on the right-hand side, and he gets washed over. He doesn't follow his man, I think, Bling to the right, and you see Laporte gets in the middle of the Alpecin train. Philipsen and Van der Poel, because they're going the far line, they actually have the quickest line, despite Van Aert being a bit ahead of Philipsen before the corner. And so now it's a bit of a jumble. Is Van Aert going to aggressively take Gaviria off Philipsen's wheel? In fact, it's Ackermann who's the positioning master. He shoots up the inside with Gaviria, and they claim Philipsen's wheel through the next right-hand corner. And you might be wondering, well, Alpecin, they're on the front very early. They were. But the reality is, no one else has a lead out here. Groeneweggens has spent his. Bauhaus doesn't have his. Van Aert is detached from Laporte, who's already done a big effort. Ackermann's got no one, Bennett's got no one, Binny's got no one, and so Alpecin can kind of go as long as they want, and with those bends, they can freewheel. They had a lot of space to freewheel in the last K. If the last K had been straight, it's a lot more difficult to hold front position for a K with 2.5 lead-out men, but through another bend, basically drops Van der Poel off. He goes to the middle with Philipsen on the wheel. Philipsen already half having to sprint, probably doing over 1,000 watts in the wheel. Gaviria is trying to fight for his wheel off Pascal Ackermann, sprints to the right of Philipsen, but Philipsen, when he comes out of the draft, way too quick. With that sort of lead out, with the legs he says he's had, he proves it today, winning his first stage of the 2024 Tour de France after a glorious year last year, after some disappointments in the first week. With that setup from Alpecin, with that final lead out from Van der Poel, really like no one was coming close to him. Binny, though, he kind of does to Ackermann what was done to him at the intermediate sprint. I guess all's fair in love and war, at least in the sprinters' minds, and he comes across Ackermann going for Philipsen's draft, and he impedes him quite a bit, and Ackermann has to stop his sprint, nearly costing him third position on the stage. But Philipsen, you can see how easy it was. 3 bike lengths, no problem. Ahead of Binny, then Ackermann, Van Aert, Gaviria, Bennett, Degenkolb, Bauhaus, Groenewegen, and Axel Zangler. Here is what Philipsen had to say after the stage.
Are there moments where you were pretty down during the first week?
Yeah, of course, it was a tough week, and it's already stage 10, and there have been 5 sprints without a win. So finally today we can do what we came for, and I'm really happy for the team that they keep on believing. And then we can play our strength and everybody get a deserved win.
In terms of GC, no changes as expected. Pogacar still 33 seconds ahead of Evenepoel and 1:15 ahead of Vingegaard and 1:36 ahead of Roglic. Well, I've got you here with some time. May as well preview tomorrow's stage. The last 50 Ks are very, very difficult. Some steep climbs. Will be warm weather, a long rolling terrain beforehand, probably a breakaway win, probably some GC action behind. Shouldn't expect massive gaffes, but definitely will be a good stage to watch. So I'll see you with a recap of that tomorrow. Ciao.